Okay, so I'm Kevin, the lead developer for Necrobarista, Route 59.
So I'm Ngoc. I'm character artist and animator at Route 59.
And I'm Joe. I'm the scene designer and the asset creator, mainly focused on 3D stuff on Route 59.
So people who have not heard of Necrobarista before, what is Necrobarista? What's the direction?
So, Necrobarista is a cinematic 3D visual novel set in a magical Melbourne cafe where the dead come back for one last night and one last cup of coffee before they pass on to the great beyond. Now, a special thing about this cafe is that the living can also enter, and because the dead look just like the living, you can't tell who's who. So you have these kind of really interesting moments where the living people and dead people, they kind of mingle, and you're never quite sure who's the dead person. Yeah, or they could both be dead, or they could both be alive.
Yeah.
As for the reason why we chose to do a visual novel, I personally feel I'm a massive fans of visual novels as a medium, but we do feel like the medium has been underutilized, right? It has really deep roots in kind of like that Japanese anime manga culture. Most of the developers these days are from Japan, and we're all massive weebs as well, so you can tell. So that's cool, but at the same time, it also does mean that the medium is mainly dating sims, erotica, that kind of stuff, and it does mean that it's become a really niche medium. People who are into it, really into it, and everyone else doesn't they just don't know it exists. So I think by making Necrobarista, we really wanted to put the medium in front of the eyes of more consumers, but also more developers, right? And hopefully, stimulate a few other developers to give the medium a go. Because I think there are fantastic visual novels out there waiting to be made.
Yeah. So wherever you mainly, outside of Melbourne and from Japanese culture, where have you mainly drawn influences from? Is there anything that specifically comes into mind when you're making the game, or is it just kind of been like a stream of conscious project?
So, I think when studying, I guess, even Little Moon, I always draw from my own experiences living as it sounds weird, but living as a normal human, it's I find real life a lot more interesting than something of a fantasy that's welled up inside of you, it's I don't know, it's an authentic feeling, it's oh, this is what I'm feeling right now, I should record this and save this for later. And so when I make anything creative or any of my characters, I sort of try remember that feeling of what I felt in that sort of situation, and sort of bring that out. A lot of it really comes from part-time work as well. Working in a cafe, you have the times when it's crazy busy, and then times when it's quiet, and then you sort of remember oh, that happened. Wasn't that interesting? This customer came in and said that, and it was cool little experience.
I mean, I think in almost summing up, there's how sometimes you read series Oyasumi Pun Pun, or Yotsubato, and then you get that moment where it's this je ne sais quoi, and I've experienced that before. And,
I relate to this.
This is life. This is life. No more, no less. This is life, and this is just that snapshot. That's it, right?
Yeah. So that's a lot about where I come from.
For me, I mainly just draw influence from what things are wrong, and honestly whatever I think that is worth of showing, in search of I suppose something I feel that's fantasy or beauty. So yeah, in the end, I suppose like real life experience does help. I did work in like restaurants for a while in the early days of the project, but other than that, it's mainly I'm a big fan of like what Pixiv and just like crawling through like all the weird tags of art that people are making, and that's mainly most of my influence come from.
So a big part of the aesthetic of Necrobarista, if you watch the trailer, if you play the demo, like you'll notice is rain. And I think rain is this really beautiful, naturalistic theme that ties almost the identity of Melbourne like together. Some people complain about it, like, oh, it's fucking raining again. Oh, sorry, am I allowed to? Okay. But I actually grew up in Yilan, a little town in Taiwan, and we have like what's called precipitation levels, which is like 82%. So 4/5 of the time in Yilan it's raining.
Yeah.
It's raining all the time. And I think that's one of the reasons why I liked Melbourne as a city so much. I used to live in Brisbane, but when I moved to Melbourne, I'm like, this feels like home. Is because I grew up like in this constant kind of rainy place. And I really wanted to, I suppose, put that part of, you know, that kind of gray clouds, but in a really peaceful, serene way. That, you know, you're in a cafe listening to like smooth jazz or classical music, and you hear that soft sound of rain, you know, reading a book and drinking coffee. That is what I want the players of Necrobarista to feel, you know, that serenity. Speaking about Yilan and my background in Taiwan, though, something you guys might have noticed is that we're all Asian Australians, the whole team, basically. We have Justin Peterson, who's the writer of, and he's Asian American. But a big part of what makes Necrobarista who we are is our background as Asian Australians. The big part of the cast inside Necrobarista are also Asian Australians, and so speaking about kind of realistic representations of life and a real snapshot of what it is like to be in Melbourne, that's a big part of where we draw inspiration from as well. Our own experiences growing up as Asian Australians in Brisbane and Melbourne. I know that's also something that you think about a lot, Ngoc.
Yeah, like, just the difference between like my parents and me is like worlds apart. Like, they're very tied to tradition, and like even like like that halfway generation who have like grown up like overseas
yeah.
until like their like early teens and then come here, right?
It's different.
I'm also different, and it's just like it's really interesting, like the similarities as well between us, like with language and sensibility, like values.
But there's also like, even as second generation immigrants, like, there are like certain little bits of life that like we get, and like I want, hopefully other Asian Australians when they play the game, they're like, oh, that's so like, I like no one else understand, but like they're like, oh yeah, that I get it, I get it.
Like the thing where like your parents store like Tupperware or like store shit in like the dishwasher and they don't use it.
Oh yeah.
How do we all know that? Like it's baffling.
It's space, and like, well, my parents like we never use the dishwasher. Don't use dishwasher.
For some
use
reason,
it as a shelf. Use it as a shelf.
Yeah.
I just hand wash the dishes. Like that's like, I'm not saying that's universal to all Asian Australians, but that's a very like typical thing that happens. But yeah.
What happened to my parents is all my parents are that kind of half Chinese.
Oh
they do that as
yeah.
well, like just weird, also placing just like Tupperware and like stuff in weird places.
Yeah. It's like there's a little shit like that, right? It's so funny. But yeah, we really want like those little bits to kind of show through. Yeah.
It sounds like it's like a very personal game as well.
Oh,
where it's
definitely.
not just like we want to make this cool and interesting world. It's like an artistic expression through the medium of a game or a visual novel. Did this also affect like the localization, where you wanted to kind of tie back into your roots so people there could also experience this?
Yep, definitely. So one thing I knew from the get-go basically is that I did want to have ideally a day one, and right now that's definitely going to be the plan, a day one simultaneous English, traditional and simplified Chinese and Japanese launch of the game. It's English, it's because Australian. Chinese because I'm also, from Taiwan. Japan's because I want to give back to Japan, right? And really, it's like super cool. I was just at TGS last week, and the greatest compliment I got was when there was I believe he worked for Famitsu, right? So growing up, I read that magazine. He was the chief editor, and he came and played the game, and he looked at me, he's like, "You're a massive otaku, aren't you?" I'm like, "Yes, I am. Yes, I am." Yeah. So that was super cool, like being able to. That's not usually a compliment. That's like an insult, but for me that.
Came out and said it to you.
Yeah, he's looking at me like, "You're a big otaku." I'm like, "Yeah, I am otaku this, man."
Oh my god.
Hi. So yeah, that's why that localization thing.
Thanks for doing this. Like, where can people find like Necrobarista and any more information?
No, thanks. Necrobarista, you can find us on Facebook, Route 59, Twitter, Route 59 Games. We also have a website. If you just Google Necrobarista, yeah, you should be able to find it.
The one we never update.
Yeah, the one we never update. You should update that as well.
Yeah.
So much stuff.